All right, hey, first guest of the show, the Tong Talks here, Marques Brownlee, aka MKBHD, aka Goat of Tech. I mean, I'm gonna call you that because the goats don't need to say that the goats. I'm just calling you the goat.
Oh, I'll
But
take it.
thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
For sure. Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I've been watching your stuff for feels like forever, years. There's not many people I've been watching on YouTube longer, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh man, very cool. So, I think this is going to be a unique show because the whole point of this podcast, separate from my Apple one, is to really dig into the personalities, the people in whether it's tech, geek, and culture. And I don't think we can ignore what is happening in our culture, in our society right now. And I thought was crazy is I feel like specifically this week, and maybe it's because you haven't had an opportunity to share this stuff as much, but you really opened up, man. I mean, we saw the kind of the letter you put on Twitter. I did just see the video you put out before we jumped on this. Mm-hmm. Really thoughtful. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, first of all, how you're feeling about everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a really crazy, complicated time. I just feel like, I'm sharing in those posts that you're talking about, I'm sharing my experiences because I realized that I was learning from other people's experiences too. And, it kind of helps to see other people's perspectives, and you get a new idea of like how they view the world. Everyone views the world differently. Everyone has a different story. So I'm sharing mine, but also just generally hoping to help people see that I'm, trying to make the right decisions and help people enjoy tech. I mean, that's what it comes down to is we're making tech videos, and, maybe it can be a distraction now with everything going on, but hopefully sharing that stuff helps people understand where we're coming from.
Did you, when you posted your Twitter, kind of, I guess, almost call it like a letter to your audience at first before this video, were people actually in a way prodding you to like, Marques, speak up for me, or were you hearing some of this, and did that influence you in any way, shape, or form? Just because, I feel like you've typically kept it kind of closer to you, knowing that like, look, I'm doing stuff behind the scenes. I don't have to say, hey guys, look at me, look at all I'm doing. Did you feel some of that at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I've never really felt that as like a pressure because I know what I'm doing behind the scenes, and I don't feel the need to speak for all of it. But, this is like, it's such a connected time. Like everything, it almost feels like Twitter is real life. Like if you're not saying it on Twitter, are you saying it at all, And, I was going about posting tech videos, trying to create a distraction for myself and people like me. And there's inevitable voices like, well, you have this platform, your silence is almost louder than saying anything at all. And not that like forced me to post something, but I didn't want to like jump on it immediately as if it's like this another online trend. I really want to thoughtfully consider what I'm sharing for a reason. So eventually I did figure out what was helpful to share.
And you kind of also talked about how other people may have kind of, for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson, how he put up a post that kind of maybe sparked a little bit inside of you. Can you talk about that post, but then also for people that maybe haven't seen the video, which pretty much everyone sees your videos, but
sure.
Right? Like what were you kind of communicating to the audience?
Yeah, so Neil deGrasse Tyson, he wrote a post yesterday, last night I read it, just about like his perspective, and it sort of opens up with him like having a conversation with a bunch of other physicists and scientists and talking about the one thing they had in common was they were all black and they all had the same like genre of stories. And I found myself reading this like, I've followed Neil for so long, and I've always looked up to him as a person and as a sort of a role model and a figure in the science world. And because of that, I was interested in his perspective and how he felt about things and what led him to where he is. So once I read that, I was like, well, kind of being in a similar position, I feel like it might help for me to do the same thing. So my video was kind of the same thing. It had the same title, which was reflecting on the color of my skin, which is just looking back at how it's affected me and how it's sort of shaped the way I've gotten to where I am. And it's sort of fun to have everyone have that little introspective moment too. I think if you read that, or if you watch the video, you might have your own reflections, and you might be able to feel related to Neil and his experiences, and so all of it comes together.
Yeah, I think what was also interesting what you said in the video, and it hit me because even though people may say, "Oh, Brian, like you haven't aged a bit," like I'm a lot old. You know, you're kind of like the new gen. I'm the old gen. I'm the previous kind of like old media gen. Like, let's be honest. And so
Okay.
it's interesting because the timing of, you know, let's say age-wise where you're at and where I was at. I remember when you're in your video thinking some of those same things, like, "Hey, if I just do what I do, being out there is an example of being a role model that someone can look at. Not that I'm actively seeking out to be a role model, but what by the fact that my face is there, because, you know, whether it's blacks in media or Asians in media, traditional media hasn't necessarily embraced us, and that's why YouTube has been just such a crazy platform where you see creators of all colors, shapes, sizes, you know, whether they're, you know, they have disabilities or not, being able to create audiences and platforms, you know, that the old guard when I was involved in media was like, oh, you either were on TV or you weren't. And all of a sudden YouTube democratized, right, this content to be like, no, you don't need the old guard anymore. And so with that point you made when you said, hey, you know, me being there, maybe I can influence 15, 16-year-old Marques. That was the same things that I was feeling when I was like 20, 27-ish or so. Like, you know, there's something about maybe coming of age where we start to really feel comfortable about ourselves and be like, now I can kind of be a champion for, I don't want to say my people, but yeah, kind of for my people and for people that look like me to help kind of be a part of that process of moving things forward. And not just myself, other people who love tech, but however they're connected to us, whether it's because of our, you know, our race kind of makes them feel more comfortable with us, or because they just love the tech. It just always, just being there is part of half the game.
Yeah, and even just like being able to stand up for something that like you really believe in. Like I said that in the video, like I'm hoping to make this for like the other 15-year-old Marques out there. But part of that is because I was recognizing as I talked myself through it that like the stuff that I decided to get into, I was lucky and basically privileged enough to have like encouraging parents and friends where I could get into things like tech, like ultimate, like golf, and not necessarily have that person to look up to. I was just encouraged enough that I just wanted to do it because I loved it. And not everyone's in that same position. Not everyone has the same luxury of being able to try new things. And I think having someone you can actually look up to, or if someone that looks like you that you can look to who's paving a path that you want to follow, I think that's worth sharing too.
Yeah, I remember growing up. I mean, look, all of my friends, they're like literally, I come from the generation of like, hey, if you're Asian, you're a computer science, right? You're a programmer, you're an engineer, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor. And I'm like, I want to do media. And it's like, okay. And there, you know, I think that in different phases of our lives, you might come across friends that you realize looking back may not have been the most supportive of you or didn't think you could do it. And then as time has gone on, they're like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. But I'm not one to, you know, like put names on a checklist, but you're like, you realize like going out of the norm can be difficult just because there's going to be people that think a certain way of how it should be versus how you want it to be.
Right. Yeah, and even I remember, you know, getting people talking to me. I think CES, I had a couple people say it, but like, oh, you know, we really appreciate what you're doing in the community because there's not a lot of brothers, not a lot of people that look like us doing what you do. And it was almost like, you know, I don't think about it very often, but when I do, it's usually in a positive light. So you would think I would want to embrace it right away, but it also kind of felt like I want to shine this light for everybody, you know. So it's a weird, conflicting place to be. But I'm glad we can all be on the same page about it being actually worth sharing.
With all the weight of everything going on, was the video and your letter, was it a little bit therapeutic for you to kind of like let this off your chest and just let people know how you're feeling? Because you know, look, obviously I'm not a black person. I experience racism, but not anywhere near the level of, you know, the just common interactions that happen that have undertones of, you know, I feel it, but I don't feel it at the same level as someone who's black, quite honestly, right? So was this kind of a way to kind of, I don't know, lift some of that off your chest as well?
Yeah, a little bit, and like just a way to almost organize my thoughts. I almost feel like I'm better able to articulate the way I'm feeling once I just start like spilling them on paper, or like I have like my notes of like things I want to make sure I say. But yeah, I feel like before saying all of it versus after, I do feel different. So you could say there's like an element of like getting it off my chest to it too. But yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, is there anything else you kind of wanted to add about just this whole thing. There's so many things we can talk about, but is there any other stuff, I don't know, that pops up in your mind in relation to just, George Floyd's murder, the state of not only our economy, COVID, racism. I mean, this is 2020 is unreal, dude.
The state of the world, man. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, I think I would say, there's always, whenever you look, there's people looking for ways to help. And so I would say pointing those people to the best ways. I left a link in the top of my video and I've shared it. But if you are actually genuinely looking for ways to help, there's a million ways you could go. There's specific petitions to sign for the prosecution of certain people. Like if you want to get into that, you can. But I would say making those resources available for people who want to help is the best thing to do. And then, letting people make those change.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to shift a little bit. And, because you are, the top tech YouTuber, one of the tops, you have some level of kind of influence in fun conversations that happen on Twitter and whatnot. And so in honor of your argument, which I actually want to hear, 24 frames per second versus 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
I know you're rubbing your palms together. And so I'd love, I obviously jumped over independent just a couple of years ago for the first time. And so I've always been like, oh, 24 frames looks so cinematic. And you're like, nah, 30 frames per second. So I'm going to give you a moment to express your side of this.
Sure. Okay. All right. So look, this is almost like fun to like overly analyze because it's really like it doesn't actually make that big a deal. You watch a video, whatever. You don't even know what frame rate it is. But here's what I'll say. I've been shooting videos for so long in 30 FPS that it just looks right. And it doesn't have to be 30. It could be 32, it could be, 36, but it just happens to be that standardized frame rate, 29.97, whatever it is. And I find that when I watch 24 FPS videos, and there's certain things, whether it's a faster movement or a pan or something, the weirdo that I am, where I watch videos and I think about this stuff, I will like see a little bit of jitteriness. I will see a little bit more motion blur, and it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look as good to me, especially in, this tech video setting where I'm trying to make everything look realistic. So long story short, 60 is too high. It's like distractingly smooth. 24 is just a little bit too low for me, so I'm team 30 FPS, and I'm ride or die on that team.
Woo! Very, very nice. Now, also, I think about, look, I know this is not for you to say, but it is amazing to see how far you've come. You're part of that, honestly, that YouTube generation. When you look back, and we talked about 15-year-old Marques earlier, what was going on in your mind, like, when you made those first few videos? Because we didn't know what YouTube was going to be. So if you had to take yourself back a little bit, what was it all about for you back then?
Yeah. I mean, the story I always tell is the first tech video I ever made, because I made some other random like golf videos or whatever. But the first tech video I made was like, I was in high school. I would saved up my allowance money. I had like $700. I was like, I'm going to buy an amazing laptop, but which one is it going to be? And so I was watching all these other YouTube videos to try to figure out, is it going to be the HP? Is it going to be the Dell? Which one's is it going to be? And I finally picked the one. I get this HP Pavilion DV7T, and I get it, and there's a couple little things about it that I didn't notice in those videos. So it was like, someone's got to, who's going to share this? If someone else is in my shoes, like, they're not going to know these things if they don't see this video. So here's what I'll do. I'll turn the webcam on, and I'll just like pull the remote control out of the PCI slot and show people that this comes with it in case they didn't know. So that's the first video. And it's like the theme since then has been to make what I would want to watch. So I'm focused on quality because I like watching high quality videos. I did a lot of tutorials and screencasts where I'm obsessed with getting the cursor at high a frame rate as possible, nice and smooth, like all that stuff. That's like stylistic, but at a core level, it really was just like, if someone else doesn't make this, I gotta have it get out there. Like someone needs to know. So I'm making what I would want to watch.
So like one day, yeah, someone needs to know. That should be like one of your shit things. Someone needs to know.
Someone's got to say it. Yeah.
The other thing with was there a point, because how things have evolved in media, do you remember, or maybe there was a moment or something that happened where you're like, hey, I can actually like make a living on this. Not necessarily a living, but maybe got that first check from YouTube, however big or small it was. But what was that kind of moment that you're like, this could be a thing? Because no one knew what it was going to become.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. To me, it was like a little extra allowance money. Like I didn't make any money from the first couple years of videos. It was before the partner program even existed. But when they introduced that, I was like, oh, okay, I'll apply. Fun fact, I got rejected, and then you have to wait like a couple months before you're allowed to apply again. And then I did, and I got rejected again.
Ooh.
It was a whole thing, but I finally did get accepted, and it was like, all right, now I can make some money back on the laptop I just bought. Maybe I can get a little cooler, a keyboard, a mouse, whatever. That's a nice bonus. I'd been doing it a number of years before. I think at some point in college, it was like you realize that this can be a job, and luckily, by the time I graduated, I was able to transition straight to full-time, like making videos. So I'm lucky that point happened before I like needed to have that stable job.
See, this is why this is amazing, right? Because I mean, I can only imagine coming out of college where everyone, when I was in college, it's like you need to get a degree, you need to get your first job out of college, right?
Yeah.
As things have changed, yours is like, oh, dude, I can make enough money. I'm just gonna keep on making badass videos. Like, right, that change in mentality from one generation to another is really important of just how people think about things instead of kind of the classic steps you take versus I'm going to make my own way, which has been amazing. So this kind of leads into, I mean, naturally just led into this. I kind of talked about being part of like an earlier generation of the old media guard, because when I was working at CNET, right, back in the day, and there was a time where there were only a few websites where you could really watch content, and then YouTube came around, and then people started making content. I would easily say better than the content that we were making. And so I feel like it created this weird dynamic between the publications and the YouTubers. So even though you have obviously built yourself as one of the most respected ones, did you ever feel maybe some of the, what I call kind of like the beef between media publications versus the YouTubers? Have you ever felt that? Or did you ever feel like they didn't accept you at first? Like, oh, what are these guys doing here? They're just YouTubers.
Yeah, it's weird. I've never been on the other side of that fence of like in a traditional media space. So I would actually say I typically didn't feel any negative energy or whatever from that space. But there were always like little subtle hints, like little cues. I mean, the YouTube thing was new, so obviously you have the old and the new, and there's that dynamic. But, like getting into CES, for example, those first couple years where it was like, I remember my first like 2 or 3 years of CES, I had to attach my credentials to a website, because just having a YouTube channel alone, no matter how big it was absolutely not enough. And I was like, well, okay, maybe, it's CES. It's this like old, show. It's been, I don't even know how many years old CES is, but it's ancient, and those rules have been around for a while, so I get it. But after a while, it was like, all right, when is this a little bit too ridiculous where like I have 100,000 subscribers and everything I publish is about tech, and they want me to attach my name to like literally any tech website? I could just make one tomorrow and get 100 views, and that's good enough. Like that was a weird cue that I think you pick up on. And I think the other one is the the shift in the way tech companies would treat media, where again, traditionally there's a relationship between tech and tech media where, there's pre-release devices and events and briefings and things like that. And they would just not have any YouTubers at those things at all. Now, it didn't matter to me because there never were any YouTubers to be at those things. But now that there were tech YouTubers, and you kind of realize that overlap in audience, we're like, we're doing a very similar thing here. We're sharing new tech with our audience. Why aren't we doing the same thing? Why aren't we at briefings? And so that gradually started to change as well. So I don't know if I don't think I've ever literally had beef with tech media because they're tech media and I'm a YouTuber. I don't think I see it that way, but you see those cues in the way old changes to new, where to give credit, a lot of companies now do have like a great relationship with YouTubers, and you see CES now accepts just social media as credentials to get into the show. So it's on its way changing.
because like I wasn't trying to prod it because poke you about it because I was curious from your experience. I thought it might be a little different because I've talked to some people and look, being on the traditional media side, I would say it right now. I think traditional media outlets tend to be, at least from my experience, a little jealous of the YouTubers. Or why did YouTuber X, Y, and Z get this before we did? We're the establishment, right? And right,
but there's got to be
Marques Brownlee. I've had this for 2 weeks, like right. Yeah. Oh, I've been using this for 2 weeks, right?
I just think there's got to be a reason, like if you're just saying why did the YouTuber get this before we did? We are insert company here. It's like that. Just you being that company isn't enough of a reason. They're sending the product to the YouTuber or to some other outlet for the specific reason of getting them to cover it. And if you're less likely to cover it, or if you cover it a different way, they have the freedom of choice of whoever they want to send it to. And just having, that name on the badge usually isn't one of the reasons.
And that's why I always found it funny. It's like, look, that was a sign that media and the way companies are dealing with the YouTube influence / whatever. The word influencer is still like bothered. I hate using or even hearing that word. It's like, fine, whatever. You guys can say it. We don't need to say it. We're just covering tech and having fun doing it, right? But that whole feeling from at least the larger publication that I was at was very prevalent. It was like, I was like, okay, it's time to start, and instead of just even when there was kind of this, I guess almost, I don't want to say beef, but jealousy. It's like, it wasn't like they were not trying to reach out to YouTubers to work together. Because I know, like, the publication that I worked for, there was a time where they were trying to go for, like, YouTubers to come on board. I said, look, YouTubers are not coming on board because guess what? They're doing their own damn thing,
Yeah, it's like and I had
I'm
that
sure you've been approached
times.
by a few. I'm sure you've been approached.
Yeah,
I know you have,
yeah.
right?
Definitely, especially in college where it was, like, a really, like, interesting offer. But I think, maybe the word jealousy applies. I don't know if it's the way all of them feel, but like when you are writing, about tech, it's something you're passionate about for this publication. It turns out everything you're writing is essentially getting swallowed up by and represented by and owned by that corporation and that company. And some people are okay with that, but like at a certain point you have feelings you want to share where you're like, this doesn't necessarily represent my employer, or maybe I just want to review something in my own style or try new things. And there's a power structure where they have to let me do this thing. And, you look at the other side of the fence where YouTubers are just switching it up willy-nilly, some to their detriment, fairly. But like, you can try whatever you want. You can do videos about tech. The next day you switch it up. And I think having that freedom to really get invested in what you're passionate about without that structure around you is this more freeing feeling. So I could see why someone really passionate about tech would want that feeling.
Yes, which is why I'm also independent, right? Like it's
exactly
just the freedom to do it. I think another thing that I wanted to say, first of all, I mean, I should have said this a while ago, but I want to say personally, like, thanks to you, because I think the first tech event that I got invited to was the most recent Google event. But what I find unique about the tech YouTubers is they're very welcoming and accepting. It's like, hey man, welcome to the party. Like, because when you work for a big publication and you have like a team of maybe 2, 3, 4 people, like, and all these hands in it, like helping you, it's different than when you're doing it on your own with yourself or another person. It's just a different beast. And I always had, I remember telling you, I had the most respect for you guys, but until I actually had to do it myself, oh damn, like that respect level goes way up, right? The ups and downs that you experience. And so, I think that I just want to say thanks for being so welcome and just basically being open and cool about it, because I think in other industries, specifically in media, there tends to be beef between people, like this weird competition, whereas I've always felt, look, there's so many voices. People can choose to go where they want to go. Like, you shouldn't watch one person to get your information.
That's a great point. Yeah. You should definitely, because these are all, individual voices, you should feel free to pick and choose who you want to calibrate to and listen to different people on the same thing so you can get different perspectives on it. What was I gonna say? Oh man, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna respond to something before, but I lost it. But yeah,
was it about crossing over? Was it about crossing over to your side of the fence, or
something like that? I mean, we talk about Yeah, people who are already into tech wanting to do. Oh, you were talking about like once you start making videos, then you understand like how different of a beast it really is. And I think that's something that not everyone is. It's almost like having two jobs now. When you're starting off and you're just writing or you're just reviewing, versus you are now doing all of that and producing. So you're a producer, you're a cameraman, you're an on-camera talent, all of that together. It's like you almost doubled your work, but you get that freedom out of it. So it's like a trade-off that I think not everyone realizes is there at first, but it's real.
Is there any stuff that is still challenging for you? You've been doing it for 10 plus years. I think what's always impressive is you're always always pushing for that next thing, right? You want to get it better. Like you had an awesome studio, you have an even more awesome studio, right? You're going to be able to do more things. Mm-hmm. Are the things that are still maybe bugaboos for you that you're like, oh man, I'll do this, but I don't want to do this?
There's a lot of, I happen to enjoy a lot of what we do in like the setup process, but there are still goals of mine that I find close to impossible that are like, I wish we could do more videos, but like the more videos you do, the less time you spend on each video. And then now they're not as good. And my goal has always been quality. So it's like, I never feel like we're making enough, which is sort of something that bothers me a little bit, but I guess that's okay. That's a trade-off. And just like being able to shake it up a little more. Like tech comes out all the time. Like a new phone comes out every week. I could just make, one video a week is 52 phone videos in a year. That's a lot, right? You could just do that. But, there's other tech and other stuff I'm interested in, whether it's headphones, whether it's computers, whether it's cars, whether it's TVs. And to be able to shake it up in that way, but still stick to the core of like the tech that's interesting that's a constant challenge for me too.
Okay, let's make up a channel that's non-tech related for Marques. What would that be?
Wow. Completely off of tech, right?
So totally off. What do you think? I know you talked about, people have been asking, vlog ultimate frisbee stuff. You're like, dude, I gotta be in the game, man. Like, I can't be vlog. Like, you can't be vlogging.
Yeah, that's the escape. I can't like. I would think like, okay, that would be easy. You would just talk frisbee and show frisbee. But like when I am in that like compartment of my brain, I've turned off the rest of it. Like the weekend is dedicated to, I'm not even on the internet. So that would be tough. If I start another channel, I would probably have a little more to do with production, like video. I would want to get into more documentary stuff. I think would be interesting. It's something I've thought about. We have all this gear. We have the team, we have the passion, we have the structure to go make like an hour-long documentary where we follow someone around for like a year. Maybe a musician is touring. Like that kind of thing would be really fun to make, but that takes me away from this for a year. So I obviously don't have that bandwidth, but that's the type of stuff I think about.
I was gonna wish you luck on that while maintaining your current channel. I mean, you do have definitely not only all the things you said, but in this business, relationships is important to have, which you obviously have, and kind of, I don't want to say clout, but just the ability to be like, hey, you could ask someone, let me do this, and they're like, yeah, sure, why not? So, okay, fine, touring, a documentary, what artist would it be? Because clearly you got it in your head.
Yeah, I was, I have a couple good friends that do music. I was thinking of either Madian, he's a French musician. He's about my age actually, and he's been touring for about as long as I've been making videos. He's incredible. So maybe him or Deadmau5 or someone who's got this like crazy high tech setup. That would be fun. That would be really fun.
All right. We'll talk a little. We are talking a little bit about tech. I like talking about all types of things with you. What about? Because this is the first time we've actually talked this long. Quite honestly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm really appreciative of you. You're a busy dude. So just want to say thanks for even being like, yeah, I'll go talk to Brian for today, even though I'm busy making all these videos.
I wanted to. I was like, I didn't want to push it to tomorrow because I was busy today, but I was like, let's get it today because I know we want to chat.
Yeah. And this has been like in the works for over a month or so. So it's not like someone's going to be like, hey, Marques, can you jump on my podcast tomorrow?
Yeah, the tough part,
like that.
Scheduling is always tough around here. The studio building that we're building into, because of COVID, it's locked and closed to non-essential work on weekends. So typically I can just come in 24/7 whenever I want, and like if someone's like, hey, let's do a podcast, I'll just pop over here and we can do it. But now that weekends are removed, I specifically have to do a little bit more during every 5-day stretch to accommodate that lost time. So it's a little bit of a crunch here, but it's temporary.
How is the whole new studio? I mean, it's massive. How's that all coming together? You've shown some videos about it, but maybe tell people like what are you most excited about, or some of the cool stuff that you found like putting it all together.
I'm gonna hit record again. The EOSR stops every half hour, so I have to hit the record button.
It's all good. It's all good.
No, moving studios is a challenge. I think we have all this new space now, and it's nicely divided into these different smaller spaces for us to set up for things. So far, the biggest initial challenge was by myself during COVID, moving furniture, gear, cabinets, all these things from the old space to the new space. That was tops priority. Once all that was done, like rolling things into the elevator and like all that, once all that was done, then I could focus on customizing it. Okay, which room is for which? What are we going to do? I'm in the podcast studio now, so I've got the mic and the headphones ready. We're sort of building up to facilitate easier production. So I think the end result, once we go through all of this, will be like the ability to make just a little bit more and just a little bit better.
Just like almost, but more like you'll have dedicated rooms that are even more streamlined, so you can just walk right into it, tweak it a little bit, and then just do it, right?
Exactly, because I mean, before we had a space, and then down the hall we had 2 more where we could build stuff, but it was like, all right, we want to shoot A-roll in C, which is down the hall. Let's move the camera, let's move the tripod and the audio setup, bring a couple sound blankets. Okay, now we've shot A-roll in there, and now we're going to go to B so we can shoot, and then now there's the top-down set, and it was just a convoluted, it's such a first-world problem that I'm describing, but it was such a mess. Real. Yeah, so like now it'll literally like I have a room that's just A-roll sets and props, and like we can build a set for each video around in that room. I have a B-roll room. We have a prop storage room. We have the office area. And so now we don't have to clutter up our office area with B-roll props and video gear. We have like separate areas for things to be like purpose built. So I think once it's set up, I think this is going to be great.
This is good. It's good. All right. So tech, we've seen not too many things in the first half of the year, but we've seen some things. Whether there is no right answer because to each their own, but is there one thing that you've liked a lot so far this year that stood out or not? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of been the year of the minor update in a lot of camps, I will say a lot of those updates have been really nice. The 13-inch MacBook Pro update, as minor as it was, I mean, it's a new keyboard basically, and a spec bump. That was a really good one for me. I like that. I wish they did more with the screen, but hey, here we are. And I'm gonna give Apple another plug. The iPhone SE, I think, is gonna make pretty big waves in the budget phone world. I mean, every phone that comes out around that price now is gonna get compared to the $400 iPhone SE. So that was another fun one to see. But there's a ton of minor updates everywhere.
Okay, because quite honestly, I deliberately don't watch reviews until I'm done with my review. Like I don't like people's ideas or words get planted in my head. I'm like,
same.
Hey, we're on islands. Like I just don't do that. So what do you think of the Flip Z? Because as an old school Motorola Razr guy, I loved it. I know it has its flaws, but there's something unique about that guy. Well, what is Marques Brownlee thought? Because I know you have the ability to dictate the kind of push people a certain way depending on how you feel.
Yeah, I mean the Z Flip was. Look, I give like a little bit of a pass from nitpicking to like a really truly first gen form factor. Mm-hmm. So when the original Fold came out, I was like, wow, man, there's all kinds of things I don't like about this phone, but give it a second. It folds in half. Like that's the point here. Let's focus on that. So, Z Flip, it's got some elements of that to it. It's a vertical flip now. It's got a new hinge. Again, when I nitpick, I'm like, all right, I'd want it to have IP certification. I'd want it to have high refresh rate. There's a bunch of things that mean I won't use it and make it my main phone, but I am glad it exists. I'm glad, I mean, it's Samsung. They're going to try stuff anyway, but I'm glad there's a company like that, out there trying things like that. And I think actually it was kind of nice having like a smaller phone. In my pocket it was small, in my hand it was small, and then I sort of pop it open very deliberately to use it. I wish
you're being too nice right now. You're being nice right now, bro.
I'll say I wish it had more functionality on the outside. I really don't like the outside screen on the Z Flip. the Moto was a step in the right direction. Even the Galaxy Fold was another step in the right direction, where you have like two modes. Where it's closed, you're doing like really simple stuff, and then when you really want to like get into email or like posting or something like that, then you open it up, and then that's your new canvas. So it's missing some of that for me, but it's still, I give it that little first gen pass.
Okay, second gen, not nearly as kind.
No excuses. Yeah.
Hammers coming down, bro.
Exactly.
All right. Just a few other things. You know, there's part of this is like we're more than like tech YouTubers, right? There's all of us. There's so many different things that we're into, multifaceted. Are there? Not that I'm saying reveal a secret or anything, but is there something that maybe people may not know that you're into or you're like a nerd about, just because the internet is everything? But is there something like that maybe people just don't know that you love or you'd like to do?
Honestly, not much. I mean, yeah, the internet is sort of a lens into almost everything.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I brought up today that I not only do I play Frisbee, but I play golf for, 16 years now. And yeah, the fun fact is my first 2 videos ever were just like posting my golf swing for like strangers on the internet to analyze.
Are they still up?
They're still up. They're still like my oldest videos. So that's something people might not know if they haven't seen it. I like to get a couple rounds in every year, but I don't play nearly as much as when I was like analyzing my swing on the internet, you know?
So you can't forward that over to Tiger's people to give you some tips to how to tighten it up?
I wish. I mean, my goal is maybe to play in like a pro-am with like the pros. Ooh. Just because like I've gone to tournaments and dude, you don't know, like people disrespect golf a little bit. You watch golf on TV, it looks easy. Totally it looks easy. Then you get out there and you're not that great at it. You get better. You play for a decade and you think you're finally good. And then you go to a tournament and watch these guys play. Oh my God, they are so good. So I got a lot of respect for that, and I'll probably still be hacking away when I'm like 100 years old.
Are you still? I know you said you aren't playing as much, and also I'm guessing COVID has shut them down. But how often were you playing about?
I tried to play like 3 or 4 times every summer. I kind of stopped playing a lot right after high school. So I played in the Junior PGA of New Jersey right before high school. I started my high school's golf team. I played all 4 years, and then when I got to college, I got like a weird, kind of dismissive email from the college golf coach. I was like, my handicap's a 12. Am I good enough to try out? And they were like, no. I was like, all right. And then I just locked into the Frisbee team from then on out. So yeah, I played casually from that point. I was not going pro.
See, look, there's a lesson to be pulled from this. You were rejected from YouTube twice for their partner program. Mm-hmm. You're rejected from the golf program. Didn't stop you. It didn't stop you.
If it's fun, it's fun. If it's fun, it's fun.
All right, bro. I just want to say again, thanks so much for your time hanging out, talking about everything from, like a wide spectrum. We're talking about like race relations to tech and everything. Like just all over the place. But thanks so much for hanging out. And, I guess whenever the next tech event comes up, we'll see each other there.
I hope so, man. I've been watching your stuff for a long time, and it's fun. I remember seeing you at CES. I was like, whoa, I forgot. I don't think, maybe that's the first time we met.
It's true. It's true, kind of. You mean when we talked to each other at the last CES?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be a part of this community, and hopefully we get to do it again sometime.
Yes, sir. All right, sounds good, man. See ya.
Peace.
All right, over.